All right, Tom Peters. I'm Director of Exterior Performance Vehicles for Chevrolet, retired.
Retired? Well, congratulations. I mean, that's not a bad vehicle to go out on.
No, I'm honored to be, and proud to be part of this evening.
So we're out here looking at the new Corvette convertible. First mid-engine Corvette, first mid-engine convertible. Is it? Am I right in saying it's the first hardtop convertible as well in the Corvette?
Yeah, as far as I know, it certainly is.
So tell me, from a design standpoint, what are the big differences between the convertible and the hardtop?
I think the biggest difference are the rear deck, where we have the air that vents out of the top and working that graphic, and then the nacelles that remain as these sculptures that house the mechanism for the top. Once the top is stowed, have it as beautiful as possible, and then as every convertible really has, is this wonderful transition that the customer expects, where the outside shape flows right into the interior and become one. And so it doesn't look like an afterthought. It looks like it was meant to be, and every bit is comfortable and is beautiful, whether the top is up or down.
So I think the interesting thing you said earlier was the convertible was developed alongside the coupe.
Yes.
So talk to me about that process a little bit.
Well, we've done this in previous Corvettes where, again, we wanted to make sure it wasn't an afterthought. It was very well integrated, both the full line of vehicles. So we took that knowledge and that experience, applied it. It worked beautifully with the C8, because not only did we do the coupe and the convertible right alongside it, because there are some shared panels, and the panels that aren't shared have to relate and correlate just perfectly between the two cars.
Gotcha.
And then alongside with that, we did the race car as well, because we wanted that perfect integration of not only the theme, but the character, the function, the personality of it. And if I could maybe go into racing a little bit, you know, we started with C5, returning it to Le Mans. And you've heard track to street. Well, we took that to heart. The entire team did. That was just something wonderful that I grew into personally. But there was a rich heritage of that with Corvette in the past, where you learn on the racetrack and you become closer and closer with that team. And I'm here to tell you that is exactly what happened. Is we got ever closer over each successive version, the C5, C6, C7, and now the 2020 Stingray, working closely with the race team. So there's this fantastic interaction. So learnings that they found on the track, we applied, were appropriate for the street car, and elements that we had developed, they interpreted from a race perspective in the race car. So it just worked out wonderful, I gotta tell you. Just a fantastic relationship and collaboration.
So in terms of your sketching, you know, your designing, what was the most fun, the convertible, the coupe, or the race car?
Oh boy, that's a tough question, I'll tell you. And in all honesty, I think to come up with that first coupe concept, just that first, what is the 2020 Stingray? What is the mid-engine Corvette going to look like? Because you've heard that, how do you, will it translate? And I'm here to tell you that I had no doubt whatsoever in my mind that it could translate. Plus, I think having the fantastic team in place that I was fortunate enough to work with, the designers, engineers, and fantastic sculptors to bring it to life, that probably set it up. Once we've had that foundation, immediately worked together, once we had established the foundation for the convertible platform, to work them all together at the same time. So
you mentioned that it was a lot of engineering in regards to airflow, keeping the engine cool. So were there ever situations where the engineers wanted you to do something and you had to push back, and then maybe you wanted something and they pushed back a little? How do you balance that relationship?
Oh boy, that is a balanced relationship. And I think, you know, aerodynamics is certainly an engineering field, but it's also been my experience with it. Has to be such a tight relationship with design, because I will tell you, from my perspective, aerodynamics is not only science, but it's also an art. There are so many things that you would think the quote is directionally correct. Well, there's all sorts of examples where whatever you thought was going to happen, just the opposite occurred, you know, and you go, what was that? Then you dig in deeper and you do analysis through computer simulations, and then that in combination with actual work in the wind tunnel on direct models and how they correlate back and forth, you discover all sorts of wonderful ways to develop solutions. But I will tell you, probably getting the air in the rear compartment and then exiting it where it doesn't get trapped or flows, removes as much heat as possible, as efficiently as possible, and does not affect the exterior performance. Is probably one of the most key factors in that. And we have to work really close. So there was a lot of back and forth to your question, but there never was an argument or a disagreement. It was just, we found some tough challenges and just worked through them.
So you were in charge of C6, C7, and C8. So if there's anyone that knows Corvette design better than anyone else in the world, it's Tom Peters here. So what is the one factor that defines a Corvette? Is there one thing that you think connects all the generations together?
I just think beautiful attitude. It just has this personality that is serious, it's aggressive, it's expressive, and beautiful.
Other than the ones that you worked on, is there one that you took more inspiration from than any others, like C1?
Oh, you just have to look at the C2. You know, the first Stingray, the split window, that is the holy grail, really. We've had wonderful Corvettes over the years. Each one of them has its own special magic. But I mean, I don't think anybody can deny it. That just rocked the universe.
So in our last interview, when you designed the C8, you mentioned inspiration from aircraft, from spaceship.
Yep.
We got to ask, is there one you had in mind? Is there like some...
In terms of aircraft?
Yeah, is there like...
Oh, you know, just some of the aircraft that's being developed now, that, you know, I mean, that have been developed over the past several years, the F-22 and the 35. There's you know, if you look at online and some of the experimental aircraft that are out there that NASA's been experimenting with, and as well as other development companies for aircraft, there's just phenomenal work going on, these hypersonic craft. And why do we do that? It's been, you know, if you go back to sketches in the 30s, there's been aircraft inspiration. The P-38 Lightning with the twin tail, that affected, from what I understand, the Cadillac fins very early on, I think in 1953. And I remember seeing sketches where it had P-38s in the background, way back then. And I guess why is that? Because they're high performance, they're a purpose. You know, they have this attitude, this aggressive look, but they're functionally beautiful. And to me, that's what good design is. It's taking a design problem, develop a solution that is beautifully executed. And to me, an aircraft does that in so many ways.
And what's your favorite part of the design on this new C8? What are you most proud of?
You know, my favorite view of the 2020 Stingray is when you stand right behind the door and you have the intake, and you see part of that fender from you're staying just right near the rear wheel and looking down on that. That's my favorite view. Zora Duntoff's vision was to do a mid-engine version of the Corvette. So be cognizant of the work that's gone on from that point through the 50s, 60s, 70s. I was involved with at least 2 versions of some mid-engine concepts. I mean, I knew this would translate beautifully, so that was not a worry at all. I knew it was going to happen.
You worked on the old concepts too. Wow.
The Corvette Indy, and then there were a couple of ones that never really went to full size or went public. But I knew in my heart, and just from experience, that there was not going to be any issue with Corvette translating to mid-engine, and I think you would agree with me that you see the proof of it.
Did you learn anything from those old?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you? Yeah.
Proportion. You know, to me, the most difficult or the most challenging area of a mid-engine vehicle, I would say, is that probably the last third of the door through the center of the rear wheel. Okay. That is the car, when you think of it.
So how'd you tackle it?
Well, you develop the overall proportion, which is again, that's the designer or engineer's dream, is to have that mid-engine proportion. You know, with that jet fighter canopy slid forward on the nacelle or the fuselage, and then develop those wheel shapes over it and having that flow. That really kind of captures it.
So Tom has worked on many projects through GM's history, ranging from the Fist in the Wind Silverado all the way through many Corvettes. But I got to ask, I don't know if you can answer this. Sure. What was the first project you worked on at General Motors?
I think it was actually an electric sports car.
Was it really?
Mm-hmm.
Was it one
in
that the
advanced
public
area?
has seen?
No, there might be some sketches floating out there, but when I came in, there were. This was 1982 when I started in the advanced area, and we were working on electric vehicles at that time.
Wow, that's so cool. And now look, I mean that's your legacy. Well, thank you, Tom.
Blessed and honored.
Many of our team members have been on the car for a long, long time. We spend a lot of time with customers. We know the ins and outs of how the previous vehicles have been developed, C5, 6, 7, what were the strengths and weaknesses, and then we always try to say, okay, what do we have to do to make the next one even better? And so we got to a point literally where we didn't know how to make it significantly better, and the only way to do it was a whole paradigm shift. We put the engine in the back, we can take, we got these massively powerful engines. The problem is getting the power to the ground, and so having 60% on the weight of the car on the rear tires, make the tires wider, and get the power to the ground, and it transforms the car, 500 horsepower and 0 to 60 under 3 seconds. It's like a miracle of physics.
So what was the hardest part in the development process? What did you kind of sweat the most on?
Well, that covers a broad range. We talked about it when we introduced the coupe. We talked about the thermal challenges. A lot of people do mid-engine cars. Not many do with trunk space behind. So that affects all the airflow around the car. You have to make sure the trunk is reasonably cool. We had a removable roof on the coupe. We had to have a place to stow that. We didn't want you to have to stick in the garage and worry about if it's going to rain. So we had a lot of these constraints, or not just do a mid-engine car. It had to be a Corvette in all the ways that it's a Corvette on the 7th generation car. Now the convertible is a miracle of packaging in itself, because when you have folding, retracting panels, they all have to nest together. They're all rigid. You can't flex them, so it's not like a canvas top where it all folds on itself. Now you have these rigid shell pieces that have to fit somehow into the engine compartment, and now you have to manage those thermal loads. And so that was a big challenge, taking the air that comes in through the quarter ducts and apportioning a portion of it to go into the engine as cool air, and the rest of it, because we have powered fans in both of those quarter ducts, the rest of it's used to push air through the engine compartment and out the back. And then we got lots of thermal shielding underneath to protect the top from the hot air which rises off the exhaust manifolds.
So it seems like a lot of the times when manufacturers develop a convertible, they build the coupe first, they chop the top off, it gets all jelly, and then they have to add a lot of weights. Tell me about how you developed the convertible. What was the process like? Did you do the coupe first and then the convertible?
Well, our coupes are convertibles, because the roof comes out, and that's been true really since 1984, since the 4th generation. And we've been evolving to be more and more successful. C5 was the first time we said it's a convertible first and foremost, even though we're going to show a roof on it. And we even have a fixed roof car back at that time in 1999. And but we've been migrating toward our niche, our specialty is 2-passenger V8, open air, very efficient structure, so very stiff, and so we've been evolving that technology all the way along. C7 got us into the aluminum structure, aluminum and composite mix instead of steel and composite mix. So we kind of cut our teeth and learned how to do that on C7, and then we took that and extrapolated into a whole new regime, putting the mid-engine with that same kind of technology, so aluminum substructure, then composites on the exterior, but everything has to be different. All the load paths, where you put structure has to be placed differently, and so that is a huge challenge to come up on your first try, come up with a very efficient open-air mid-engine car.
Do you know how much more the convertible weighs than the...
It's about 80 pounds.
Only 80 pounds?
Which is not bad if you look at other people's. A lot of people, their retracting hardtop weighs a lot more of that, because it's the mass of the top plus the bracing that they have to put on to make it reasonably good. We've benchmarked some very elite names. I don't want to say who they are, but we've benchmarked some very elite names on convertibles, and our car is vastly superior in terms of overall stiffness, and we do it with no weight penalty from the coupe, and you'd be able to tell that they have quite a large weight penalty from the coupe.
So was the bracing already in place from the coupe?
Well, since we designed the coupe with the roof, we don't even pay attention to the roof as a structural member. We do that afterwards. We design the whole body structure, and then we say, oh, by the way, there's a roof. Can we get anything additional out of it? But the requirements for vehicle performance are based on no roof at all, because we know this is coming.
So why the hardtop then? Why the hardtop convertible? What was the thinking? Because you already have a slight similarity with the coupe. Why do you go for the hardtop?
On the C7, people wanted the convertible to look like the coupe. They thought the coupe looked really cool. They liked the elongated greenhouse, the quarter glass. They liked the quarter vents that we put on there. Because of the top mechanism, we couldn't do that. So from the beginning, we said, you know what, the kind of old school canvas tops are kind of out now. It makes the car look kind of vintagey. And if you look at the shape, this is obviously a modern car. We didn't want to put a canvas top on top of that. We wanted the coupe to have all the visual appeal of the coupe, and then we had the opportunity to give you everything, your cake and eat it too. So you get one button, drop the top, takes no luggage room away, which historically you've lost a lot of luggage room when you put the top down. And even if you didn't put the top down, with the top up, convertible's head compromises to the luggage room. So we thought we have an opportunity, if we can figure out how to fold this thing into the engine compartment, we'll keep the trunk the way it is on the coupe, you get the best of all worlds.
What's your favorite part of the car? What are you most proud of? This is your baby. What are you most proud of?
So historically, when I've gotten that question, I've always said the bandwidth of the car, you know, it's great as a daily driver, cross-country tour, track weapon, it's great at all those things. That's historically what I've been most proud of what Corvettes do. This one, after back-to-backing, you know, focused driving experience between the 7th generation and the 8th generation, it's really the way it drives. And we were paranoid from the beginning. You put all this weight in the back, all the things we've learned about 50-50 weight distribution all these years don't necessarily translate into 40-60. And so from the beginning, that's why you saw engineering mules as long ago as 8 years ago. We were figuring out what does it take to make a really benign handling car with 60% of the weight on the rear. And we wanted the base chassis to be good. You can fix everything now with electronics. You can have stability control come in and save you, but we wanted you to be able to shut everything off and still have a really benign handling car. And the final result is even better than we thought. Even amateur drivers get in this thing and say, oh my God, what you guys have created made me feel like a hero. The back end is just pinned. I can jerk it around. It responds incredibly well, and it's super, super stable. No trace of the back end ever wanting to come around on you. It's just a remarkable driving experience.
So you were engineering lead on C8, C7. You were on C6, right?
I was assistant chief engineer on C6 and C5.
And C5. So if anyone knows what a Corvette is, it's you. You know the DNA. But I think the question is, going forward, starting with the C8, what makes a Corvette a Corvette? What's the secret sauce?
Well, it's a road-going private jet for two, you know, 2 passengers, first-class seating, and you know, it's that driving experience is what a Corvette is. It doesn't matter if the engine's in the front or the back. It's that intimate driving experience, whether it's just you in the car, you and a passenger in the car. If you're not taking more than 2 people, you don't need anything but a Corvette. It's got plenty of luggage room. My wife and I, she had horses, and we used to pull up at a feed store, and we'd buy 300 pounds of grain, and they'd come out with a fork truck on a pallet, and they'd say, where's this going? It's like, the Corvette. Right. And in prior generations, even in this generation, it's got so much load carrying capacity, you can put everything in.
Cool. Awesome, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay.